In this lesson, I'm going to go over the songwriting secrets and lesser understood harmonic underpinnings of the song Wouldn't It Be Nice off the amazing classic Beach Boys album Pet Sounds. I think this may be one of Brian Wilson's most deceptively simple compositions. The song has a real classic rock and roll chord progression and sort of boogie woogie feel. Especially that bass line. Just a real feel-good type of thing. And yeah, the verse has this really simple chord progression, and then the next section or the B section or the bridge or even the intro always goes to this weird key change that has a really nice harmonic complexity. So it's like the simple progression, and then on these secondary sections, it's more like just this really sophisticated chord progression that utilizes non-diatonic movement or notes that are not specifically in the key. That dichotomy of that simplicity versus sophistication, I think, is the happy medium that sort of seems to be the essence of Brian Wilson's search for truth inside music. Wouldn't It Be Nice? The song explores a fundamental key change relationship. It starts in an intro, key, and within like 12 or 13 seconds, we are already in or even less, we're already into a key change into the verse. So that really kind of throws your ear for a loop, but we'll go over all of that very shortly. I think this is a really nice, innocent song. It's very idealistic, back in the day. Wouldn't it be nice if we could like spend the night together and not have to hide it from mom and dad? And it has this real feel good type of thing, like the Beach Boys' earlier stuff, like I Get Around and this innocent stuff. But it's with all of the sophistication that Pet Sounds had. So it really, to me, is the happy meeting place between the early Beach Boys career and then that brief period of extreme sophistication with Today, Pet Sounds, and then Smile, and then there was sort of a downfall after that. Anyway, this song seems to be that moment in time that it all comes together. The feel good of the old days of the Beach Boys and the sophistication, Phil Spector, pocket symphony, wall of sound, personalized for Brian's emotions. It's also one of the more upbeat songs on Pet Sounds. There's not really a lot of upbeat stuff. Maybe the Sloop John B's kind of quirky, but this song really feels good. It has some interesting tempo changes that kind of slows down and speeds up. And if you're a songwriter or composer, that's something that's severely lacking in rock music. So the type of thing you would get from a conductor in a symphony where the tempos can be molded into this plastic. Don't forget, if you have a drummer, you can still do those things. And Brian Wilson really does a good job of that in the arrangement of the song, as we'll go over. It has a really cool, funky, sort of boogie woogie, old timey bass line, like I was saying before. Boom, 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 boom. You may have noticed I'm not doing this song in the original key, at least in the verse, was an F. What? It's super high. It's Brian at his peak of his young voice, and it's right in between falsetto and not falsetto, so it's really hard to like. Wouldn't it be nice if we were? Yeah, the verse of the original is in F, and it's a hard key to sing. Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait? It's going between your chest voice and falsetto, and for a almost 48-year-old, it's just not. To me, it's going to be way easier to teach this song if I move it way down. But, this isn't a video about playing this song in the exact key. It's a video of what chord progressions, are the underpinnings of this chord progression that make this song a song. So I'm choosing to go down a perfect fourth, and we'll go and do the verse in the key of C. And how much easier is this to sing? Wouldn't it be nice if we were older, then we wouldn't have to wait so long, and wouldn't it be nice to... So I'm going to do it verse in C. But remember I said the intro is in a different key? This is a good time to quickly explain to you my chord progression charts. You've probably seen these in some of my other videos. You will see this thing where there's like a sun. That tells us we're in a new key. So anytime there's a new key, you're going to see a little sun above this. So right here, we're in the key of A. And by bar 4, we switch to the key of C, where we stay for quite a while. You'll see Roman numerals in the bar, and that tells us what chord, the current chord we're on, happens to be of the key that we're in. So this first chord, A major 7, you see is Roman numeral 1 of the key of A. If we go over here to this G7, that's the 5, Roman numeral 5, or the dominant chord of the key of C, which is where they're going there. So all pretty self-explanatory. You'll see the section names, the repeats, just like a regular chart that you just kind of read down, but it's really the Roman numerals explaining what position the current chord holds of the key that we're in at that moment. This song has unexpected key changes that are really amazing and kind of unique. I'm not sure I've heard these ones exactly before. Really great orchestration and band and just a feeling of the rhythm section. Sort of a boogie-woogie accordion shuffle, which is really bizarre. You hear accordions. We'll talk about that in a little bit. The Wrecking Crew musicians, all the amazing studio musicians in the background, their performances, the creative background vocals, of course, as we've come to expect from Brian, and just a great feeling and an upbeat song. A song, I can't explain it. Some songs you get tired of. This song, when it comes on, it puts me in a good mood. So let's get right into it here. Let's talk about the intro. The intro to me has this weird Hawaiian type of sound. I'm going to play it in a slightly different key, a little faster, just to avoid the detection algorithms here. I don't know if it's going to work, but... That's definitely higher pitch, so it sounds better than that. Go listen, real quick, can I say, go listen, go to YouTube, go to whatever, listens to the Pet Sound Sessions, and listen to Wouldn't It Be Nice stereo backing track, or whatever they call it, where they hear no vocals. So you hear just the live take of the studio musicians and all of these accordions and drums and multiple basses and horns, baritone saxes. There's just some really, really cool stuff in here. Go listen to that so you can hear what I'm talking about, because when I play these examples here, it's just for timbre. So I think this is, I swear it sounds like a harp to me, but I think it's a 12-string electric guitar and a 12-string mandolin guitar seems to be what the liner notes indicate. And then they're using that echo chamber. You know, they didn't have they probably had plate reverbs in those days, but in Brian's day, Pet Sounds and before, they would use an actual echo chamber, which they would take a sound, take it from the mixing board and send it into a room with a speaker and record that speaker in this reverberant room. And it had a really unique sound. So that does not sound dry at all. Key change immediately. Now we're into the verse. And yeah, that echo chamber adds a really psychedelic and fluid quality that for Brian's music tends to bring it together. It's a kind of a glue. Now, when you're doing your key assessments, you have to sometimes look ahead in a song. And if you listen to this entire song, you would hear pretty quickly, if you just did a basic assessment, that it changes keys on bar 4. Then we're in another key for quite a while. Then it stays in that key. And then it goes to this bridge, and you can hear that harp, the harp, or the 12-string mandolin and the 12-string guitar from the beginning very clearly. Oh, so here's that middle section. So this could give us an indication. So if you go later in a song, you might find intel on what key something's in, because you're always trying to determine what key something's in, and it's actually deceptive and not immediately apparent. So if you had listened to the whole song, done your sort of research, you would see, wow, the intro comes back on that bridge. And there's vocals, so that kind of obscures that. Hear that harpy thing that I'm talking about then? Same key even. So there is something so weird going on, and this is so important if you want to understand the nuances of Brian's writing. And I've said time and time again, I might point out some music theory things that are happening. That doesn't mean Brian was thinking of it that way. I always I guess that Brian had a more intuitive approach. He probably understood some of this theory to a degree, but I don't think he was like, oh, we'll modulate through this and this and this. If I happen to analyze it that way, you know, you don't have to be offended that like, oh, he wasn't thinking of it like that. Yeah, I know he probably was not. Yet, from a songwriting perspective, I'm going to analyze it so that we can understand what happened and maybe use it in our own songs. That's really the goal of my whole channel. Trophy Husband. I told you we already have some intel from later in the song in the bridge that has the same exact, 12-string mandolin and 12-string guitar part. So the beginning is really pretty ambiguous because there's these two instruments playing like solo lines and there's nothing really playing the chords necessarily. So there's a line that goes something like... Then we're into the verse. And then on this end, it's going... So the tricky part is you want to just be like, that's an E. That's an E major arpeggio, right? And then if this was a bass, which it's not really a bass because it's a high instrument playing it like a mandolin or a guitar, whatever it is, this lower note, it's making a 1-6 movement, like we're E major, C sharp minor. So it's really pointing to that this is probably a 1-6 in E major. And we start off with an E major arpeggio. Every piece of information is pointing toward this is just an E major. Now, what other keys could we even consider? That's the funny part. There's really only one other key we can consider, and that is... How about we take that information from the bridge and then we look at what the chords were there? Because remember I said there isn't really chords in this intro. There's nothing playing the chords. The bridge, there is chords. It's... Maybe if we think and wish and hope and pray it might come true. So what do you know that this bridge is A major, not E major, even though we have an E major arpeggio. So are we in E major or A major? And what could differentiate that? There's only one note that's different between those keys. In the key of A major, we have a D natural. In the key of E major, we have a D sharp. Watch. Right here, instead of D natural. So if Brian would simply play one or the other, we could make a key determination. But Brian doesn't do that. He does what's been called tonal ambiguity, where you kind of like he does in God Only Knows. If you haven't seen that video, I have a whole bunch of Brian songs, but God Only Knows seems to be my biggest, most viral one. So but Brian is using things in multiple keys all the time, whether he's thinking of it like that or not. So like I said, this really seems like it's in E major. It'd be E major, C sharp minor, then 4, 5. But then we go to that bridge and it's the exact same notes. A major 7, D major 7, which is clear as day. A 1, 4, and then C sharp minor 7 to F sharp minor 7 is a 1, 4, 3, 6 in the key of A. So let's take a look at this little harpy part that I call it. I can't not think of it as a harp. It sounds like a harp to me. Don't you think it sounds kind of like a harp? It's a cool sound, man. Really cool sound. Very iconic. So let's see if it differentiates between D and D sharp so we can make a key determination of A or E. It completely avoids the D or D sharp. Then changes keys. So that's the whole thing, is tonal ambiguity. He completely avoids this being one or the other. And this little descending part really makes you feel like it's an E. But then we go to the bridge and we see that the whole part's an A. So I have to take that as gospel. Could it be that Brian really was thinking of this in E and the bridge is a reharmonization? Yes, it could, because there's always ways to reharmonize melodies into different keys. But I have no reason not to take the bridge as gospel. But I will say it is extremely deceptive. So what would be the takeaway lesson here for your own songs would be choose two related keys that have one note difference, such as like A major and then down a fourth of E major. and you could go down a fourth from any key. C major would be down to G major. And you're going to find between those two keys particularly, there's only one note different. In the case of A major and E major, it's a difference between whether you do a D or a D sharp. Every other note they share is exactly the same. So the fact that Brian completely avoided it and didn't commit. So we have it really sounds like a little toy box type of E major melody. But then that bridge tells us, no, we're in A major. So yeah, the songwriting device, you would choose two keys that are one note different, and you would literally avoid the note that makes them different, and then you could kind of ambiguously play between the two keys. This song, yeah, has a bitonal nature. The E major arpeggio, but the key of A. You could easily justify that it's in either one of those keys. But right away, we go from a key change. So I'm going to call it in A, just like the bridge is. The bridge I'm taking as gospel, that it's not some reharmonization. Could it have been in his head? Yeah. Could he have not been thinking that at all and just playing cool notes on the piano and singing over it? Yeah, probably. So let's go over those chords in the intro. We have what I'm calling, even though this is an E major arpeggio, because I'm taking the bridge as gospel, we're calling this A major 7, D major 7. Then I'm calling this A major 7 again. And then we go to, I called it E minor G7. I really wish I wouldn't have called it E minor. So what's happening there is the song is quickly modulating to a new key. So it's using that G7 to suddenly pivot to the key of C on the verse, as if nothing had happened. So most songs, pop songs, do not make a key change on bar 4. So this E minor is really just part of a G6 or a G13. So I should have just said G7, and this harp arpeggio, I keep calling it a harp, is really just part of a dominant chord. Dominants love to have that 6 in there. So it's a E minor, right, that's inside of that G7. And that E is a 13 of G7. So I shouldn't have called that E minor at all. I should just call this G7, and what the harp is doing, harp. Harp. Here, this. It's really just a fancy G7. Suddenly switches to a new key. The band comes in. There's a timpani. There's a drums. There's... Yeah, right there at that key change, there's like a timpani pickup, and the drums come in, and the band enters, basically, and getting away from this 12-string guitar and the mandolin duet. So the timpani is do-do, and so the drums do the first hit. So I want you to take note that Brian's idea for this verse groove was accordions playing like a boogie-woogie. So that would be the rock and roll boogie-woogie in C, up to 4 of F. So even though the accordions aren't doing that note, they're not doing that, they're just doing... It has this accordion rock and roll boogie-woogie feel. If you don't believe me, check this out. There's 2 accordions, actually, and they're going pretty heavily through that echo chamber. What an absolutely wild idea that Brian had. They say Brian is a master of like rock and roll timbres and textures, and no one else was doing this kind of thing, doing a boogie-woogie, double accordion, shuffle thing. The rest of the instrumentation is pretty sparse. There's Hal Blaine on the drums, and he's rarely doing a hi-hat. They usually let, back in Brian's day, this is a secret if you're coming up with drum grooves for like 60s songs, is keep the drummer off the hi-hat and ride, and you have some other instrument like tambourine or castanet or hand clap or a triangle. There's any number of things you can do to sort of do similar things that texturally that a hi-hat does, but you keep the drummer off of it, because listen to the drums. He's just doing kick drum and then snare and floor tom at the same. take the hi-hat away from the drummer sometimes. I really don't think that's done enough. Everyone's always laying into these rock beats. I'd rather hear this sometimes. And there's this really playful bass line. Forget that I'm singing this song and we're hearing it in a different key. So there's this really playful bass line that goes. So let's go over the verse. The verse, remember I said this song oscillates between sort of a complex harmonic thing and then something simple. So the intro, I think, is very complex because of that bitonality. It sounds like it is in E, but it's actually in A, at least according to the bridge. Now the verse could not be a simpler chord progression. We're in the key of C, which we're suddenly in. So it's 1, 4, 2, 5. That is a pretty cookie cutter chord progression, but I think you get a little momentum from that key change. It doesn't sound so cookie cutter if you're suddenly modulating on bar 4 and then you're dumped out into a new key. There's sort of a period of disorientation where the ear doesn't even acclimate to it. So you could actually get away with simpler chord progressions immediately after a key change because the ear is still kind of adjusting to like, whoa, where are we? And chord progressions don't always need to be complex anyway. It's really that harsh contrast that happens on bar 4. So let me play that for you. Awesome, playful bass line. And if you know Brian's type of orchestration, he often does 2 or 3 things doing a bass line: a stand-up bass, a picked bass, sometimes like a surf guitar played down low, a bunch of different things, sometimes like a high-picked bass. He has a really cool bass sound. You can make a monster bass sound by getting 2 or 3 or 4 things to play a bass line in unison. There seems to be probably some kind of tack piano or grand piano. It says there's an acoustic rhythm guitar. It's very difficult to hear. That's the accordions. Accordions are absolutely front row center there, and I think they should be. Some kind of clicky percussion thing that's pretty cool. Anyway. For that bass trio on this song, it says Lyle Ritz was playing stand-up bass. There's an electric bass or a 6-string bass by Ray Pullman, and then electric bass by Carol Kay. That is quite a lineup there. So, like I said, the intro progression is abstract and elevated, bitonal, ambiguous, but the verse is completely standard. 1, 4, 2, 5. So that song is a sophisticated, simple, and we'll see as we go through that it continues to follow that form. I told you to listen to the instrumental only track, no vocals, so you can hear what these musicians all sound like together and what a brilliant palette Brian was working with these boogie woogie accordions or whatever weird idea he had that just feels so good. Go listen to the vocals only of this, where you hear the lead and the background vocals together with no music, and you're going to hear the brilliance of Brian Wilson's background vocal writing of when to do oohs, when to do ahs, when to do something contrapuntal, when to split off from each other, and when to latch onto certain words of the lead vocal to, accent it and then move back to the oohs or something. That's how background vocals work. You can't do all one thing. It has to be really, really dynamic. So coming out of the intro. Wouldn't it be nice if we were on? Then we wouldn't have to wait so long. And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of world where we belong? It's gonna make it that much better. That's what I call the pre-chorus. So that other part's the verse, wouldn't it be nice? And the background vocals basically are like, ooh, I'm not doing the melodies of them, but just their basic vibe. Ooh, haven't spent. Like, you latch on to just very certain words of the lead vocal, and it really fortifies them in this amazing way. So go listen to the background vocal only, and I think you're going to hear some really cool stuff of how Brian decides to do oohs, ahs, stagger stuff, and momentarily sync up with the lead vocal, but of course in 4 or 5 part harmony as he was doing it. You have to make it contrapuntal, you have to make it fluid, you have to make it alive. Otherwise background vocals are really boring. I've heard so many ooh, ah, kind of. Nobody wrote better background vocals than Brian Wilson. That is just a straight fact. Look it up. No, you can't look that up, but it's a matter of opinion, man. No, it's really not. His background vocals are creative beyond belief, especially as we approach the Smile album. So this just song is another good example of really great background vocals. So go listen to that background only. So that's the verse. Pretty simple. Wouldn't it be nice if we were other? Then we wouldn't have to wait so long. And wouldn't it be nice to live together in the kind of world where we belong? Now the pre-chorus. You know it's gonna make it that much better when we could say goodnight and stay together. Wouldn't it be nice? Verse 2. So I call that part pre-chorus. Why? There's no real chorus because you know how most songs have a chorus? Here it comes, and sing the chorus. Sometimes people are smart enough or intuitive enough to put the chorus in the verse. And so clearly what Brian does is put the chorus in the verse. Wouldn't it be nice? The song's called Wouldn't It Be Nice? But it's in the verse. You might think that's a simple device, and I'm sure there's plenty of songs that do that, but most songs, you gotta wait for this other section called the chorus where you hear the title of the song. And, I like traditional song forms, and I like really out there abstract song forms, but if you can basically avoid a chorus completely and make the catch of the song the verse, that's a pretty cool songwriting technique. So put that on the wall. Make the chorus the verse. That song does just that. Wouldn't it be nice if we were over? Then we wouldn't have to wait so long. And wouldn't it be nice if we lived together in the kind of world where we belong? So I'm back to answering a question I asked like 2 minutes ago. Why call this the pre-chorus? I don't know. Song forms, you have to either call them A, B, A, C. I don't want to do that because I'm using so many chords and key changes. If I added another thing of A's and B's inside of my chord chart, that would be a disaster. I can't do that. I have to name the section something. So I named it intro. Then I named it verse. It sounds like a verse. Wouldn't it be nice if we were? And then I told you that's actually the chorus too, but we're not calling it the chorus. So I'm calling this next section the pre-chorus, and pre-choruses don't always lead. It's kind of like a B section. It doesn't always lead to a chorus because in this case, there isn't really a chorus. So following the trend that had been said earlier of sophisticated like the intro, simple like the verse, we go to the pre-chorus. Take a guess. Sophisticated. Let's look at just the chord progression there. A minor 7 over E. G minor 7 over C. Wow. A minor 7 over E. Then stay on that bass note. E minor 7. Wow. D minor 7. G7. So it's connecting with a 2-5 back to C. So this is all in C. There's only one diatonic chord in there and a couple alternate bass notes, but the non-diatonic chord will really throw you for a loop. What do I mean by non-diatonic? If I'm in the key of C, if I'm going to be diatonic, I'll build only chords out of those notes. Any alteration from that is non-diatonic. So if you hit one note that's not what you would expect, and in this case it's that G minor 7. So after having spent the day together, hold each other close the whole night through. Here it comes. You know it's gonna make it that much better when we could say goodnight and stay together. Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up So it goes to a verse 2 there. So what on earth is going on in the pre-chorus? So we're in that key of C, so let's forget about the bass notes and just say A minor 7 is 6 of C. So that makes sense. We ended the verse on a 2-5, D minor, and it's going to go to a 6, which is a very common resolution. If you don't want to resolve to the 1, you can resolve to the 6, because it's the relative minor of C. And let's not forget that A minor is the same, not the same A, but we were in A in the intro and then modulated quickly up a minor third to C. So we're going back to A here, but we're going to the diatonic, or the notes you would get just out of the C major scale, which is A minor 7. You know it's gonna make it that much better. So that G minor 7 is something we call 5 minor. 5 is supposed to be dominant, G7. But so many pop songs use that because it's from a related key, probably from F major, which is the 4 of C, right? So anytime, this is just something you need to remember, instead of going to the 5 you're expecting, which is G7, you can always go to the 5 minor. Watch this sound. Yeah, so 5 minor comes up all the time. I've done it in a different video, and maybe I'll drop it in right here, my little findings about 5 minor. So 5 minor is a huge thing in pop music. So if we're in the key of A like we are in this song, 5 is usually major or dominant. But in pop music history, it borrows from another key and just goes straight to the minor 5, which is a really nice sound if you know Mr. Bungle Pink Cigarettes. Hush me, the verse, and that's 5 minor. The wind in the leaves to 1. Other songs that use 5 minor, Louie Louie. Everyone thinks that's so typical, but how much is 1, 4, 5 is usually major in like 99% of those pop rock songs. No, but look what Louie Louie does. It goes to 5 minor. A, D, E minor. I think that is cool. Strawberry Fields. Let me take you down 1, 'cause I'm going to Strawberry Fields. That's 5 minor. Nothing is real. Beach Boys Kokomo. Don't like the song, but everybody knows a little place called Kokomo. So that right away goes from A to Afternoon Delight to 5 minor. We'll perfect our chemistry. What's that other one? Oh, Ordinary World. I don't cry but yesterday in the ordinary. So I said we're going sophisticated, simple, and then sophisticated, at least harmonically speaking. We've gone back to sophisticated. So that A minor 7, Brian was not content to put A in the bass. He was going to make a different melody in the bass and put the 5 of A minor, which is E. You know, so A minor 7 you could play like that, or you can kind of cluster it. I think this one sounds kind of good. You know it's gonna make it. And then that G minor 7 or the 5 minor, he's not content to have G in the bass. He wants to do the perfect 4th of G, which any minor chord, if you put the perfect 4th of the minor chord, so let's say you're in G minor and you say, oh, what's the perfect 4th? G, up a perfect 4th. Always a good note. So anytime you have a minor chord, let's see a G minor, put C in the bass instead of G minor. See what happens to the sound? Tell me that doesn't sound a lot like Brian Wilson's music, understanding how to use that. So he really throws you for a loop here. You know it's gonna make it that much better. So the chord progression is going 6 over the E to 5 minor with a different bass note. Then back to 6 over the E, but then you keep the E. Look, and do an actual 3, which falls down to 2. Kind of like nothing happened, like nothing to see here, but no, there was something to see here. It has a Burt Bacharach type of sound, huh? So don't forget about 5 minor is a great non-diatonic chord to add to your music. If you're doing only diatonic chords, it's gonna be boring. You gotta add something once in a while, or some funky key changes, or all of the above like Brian's doing here. He's giving a songwriting masterclass, so buckle up. This is amazing stuff, even if it's subtle. So let's take a listen to the instrumentation there, coming out of that accordion sort of boogie-woogie thing. So here comes the B section, or the pre-chorus, like I said here. Immediately see some brass comes in, baritone saxes and maybe tenor saxes, and I'm not sure what else, a bassoon or something. No, I'm just guessing. It's hard to tell on Pet Sounds, you know. The wall of sound that Brian was informed by really liked to add lots of instruments and almost overwhelm you with what's going on. But Phil was more, I'm not going to say egregious, Phil Spector, but his was more of a washout and reverb, and Pet Sounds is a little bit more personal. So I definitely hear some bari sax in there. Oh, and then the accordions, instead of doing da-da-da, become ja-ja-ja. So instead of doing the eighth note boogie-woogie thing, they just do quarter notes. It sounds so much better when it's not transposed like I had to do here to avoid the algorithm. Still probably won't work. I'm going to get a strike on this song. I know it. So, keeping true to the form of the song of complex intro that's bitonal, immediate modulation, normal chord progression in the key of C, and then we stay in the key of C, but we do a very sophisticated chord progression for the pre-chorus of you know it's gonna make it G minor 7 over C, that much better, back to A minor 7 over E, when we could say goodnight, and E minor 7, stay, that's 3, then 2, 5, together, verse 2, wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up in the morning when the day is new. You know, it's a very simple lyric, but I think it's one of the most effective simple lyrics on this album. Wouldn't it be nice to wake up in the morning when the day is new? If you've ever been the creative type like Brian, I have lived that life all through my 20s. I still do intermittently, even though I'm a husband and father. See, a trophy husband. Woo! I get my best stuff done late at night. It's late at night right now. It's 1:30 and I'm just getting started in this video. So yes, it would be nice. It's like this ideal. It really would be nice to like wake up at the crack of dawn and go on a hike and go do yoga and drink really clean water and eat organic food and do everything correctly. But the creative types are a little bit self-destructive, I would have to say. There's something about the lifestyle. Like when I record all night, like you feel like crap the next day, but you're like stoked that you made this cool thing or whatever, but there's a sacrifice to make. So I think this lyric is really cool. Wouldn't it be nice to wake up in the morning when the day is new, and after having spent the day together, hold each other close the whole night through? It sure would be nice to do that, but none of us making things like Pet Sounds or albums or art are probably doing that. So that's something to aspire to, but we're all failing to various degrees. So sometimes Brian music is almost a compensation for all of this like disappointment and sadness he feels, and then he like turns it into something positive. Like he doesn't make his music all sad. Sometimes you'll hear like a sad ballad, but this song feels great. I think it feels really, really good. So let me go over bars. I've said it over and over and over again. Don't just have your compositions be 4 bars of this, 4 bars of that, 4 bars of this, 4. If it doesn't break that mold in some way, shape, or form, I promise you there's going to be something boring of your song. Does that mean you can't make a good song using that? No, because a lot of songs do. But interesting arrangements are always going to have odd numbers of bars. Sometimes you might have a bar of 5 or an extra 2 bars, and things are always adding up into 2s and 3s or 4s and 5s or 4s and 3s. You have to just group them in logical ways that make sense. So the intro is clearly 4 bars. That's fine. So 4 bars of the intro, then 8 bars of the verse. So that's all following the boring formula. But I told you just have to do some variations at some point. And don't just add an extra bar because you're being proggy, progressive about it. Do it because it feels right. So check out this pre-chorus. We have a group of 4 and then 2. So watch it. You know it's gonna make it that much better when we can say goodnight. extra 2 bars. Together. Wouldn't it be nice if we could wake up in the morning when the day is new and after having spent. So there it goes. It does an interesting bar of 6, you could call it, because it's 4 plus 2, or you could say it's just a bar, a phrase of 2. So that adds dynamic sort of breadth to a composition, to not always go 4-4-4 or 8-8-8 or things like that. Add a phrase of 2 or a phrase of 3 or a phrase of 5. So it goes back to verse 2. There's nothing different except the lyrics. There might be a percussion difference or something, but it's basically the same. The boogie woogie accordions, one of the coolest ideas for a backing track ever. Don't you forget, when you're writing your next song, please consider boogie woogie accordions. They're really underused. No one's going to say you're ripping off Wouldn't It Be Nice? I would love to hear a whole album of boogie woogie accordions as the basis for really nice pop music. It repeats to verse 2. Nothing's different. And then it does another pre-chorus. You could call it pre-chorus 2, but it takes the second ending, which is exactly the same. So I probably could have written that in a way. Did it really need that second ending? Maybe not. So the second pre-chorus. What happy times together we've been spending. I wish that every kiss was never ending. Oh, wouldn't it be nice? There's some little like harmonica line or something right there. I don't know if accordion plays it. It's just like... and it takes us to a sudden modulation to the bridge. Remember, this is that bridge we gathered intel from to determine what key the intro was in. So the chord progression of the bridge, we're suddenly in the key of E major. Does that sound familiar? Oh yeah, that's the key that we started in and then suddenly modulated to C. So this is all very simple to have like a really wild chord progression that we have as the intro to a sudden key change to C. And then for our bridge, we're going to go back to that home that we established in the intro, kind of like a foreshadowing type of thing. And then they kept the same harp, whatever line. So we're in the key of E major and we do a progression that goes 1. These are major 7 chords, so they're a major chord with a major 7, not a dominant 7, a major 7. So the bridge. Maybe if we think and wish and hope and pray, it might come true. So that chord progression is 1 in A to 4, then 3 to 6. Then it repeats that again, 1 to 4, to 3, to 6, then it just does 3, 6, 3, 6, and suddenly modulates back to C, just like the intro. Wouldn't it be nice? Then it slows down, honky-tonk style. Then goes back to another version of the pre-chorus, but it's different. I wish that every kiss was never ending. Second ending, transition. Wouldn't it be nice? Bridge, unexpected modulation. There's no announcement for the modulation. Sometimes composers feel a need to justify the modulation and do chords that actually lead there. Other times you just go straight to it like a slap in the face. That's what I call an unannounced modulation. So that's what we're doing here, whereas the modulation in the intro is probably what you'd call a semi-announced modulation, where it just quickly does the G7 chord and announces it, but you didn't really see it coming necessarily. So this bridge is a slap in the face, but it feels so familiar. You know why it feels familiar? Because he takes the same 2 instruments that are the intro of the song, and he basically just lets them play the same line again. Then, Does that make sense? He just does the same intro, and it really feels like home because he established home in those first 4 bars. So that's really the brilliance, is that the instruments from the intro come back, and then we have a completely different melody and like that we hadn't really had before. So wouldn't it be nice? Transition. Maybe if we think and wish, hope and pray it might come true. Run, run, win. Maybe then there wouldn't be a single thing we could not do. We could be married, we could be married, then we'd be happy, and then we'd be happy. Wouldn't it be nice? Bam, bam, boom, boom, bam, doo, doo, boo. Bam, ba, ba, bam, ba, boom, bam, ba, ba. Slows down. Love that. Remember it? Pre-chorus 3. You know, it seems the more we talk about. So it goes to this almost like rubato, where the tempo is not solidified. Really cool. Another highlight of this arrangement. So comes out of that bridge. Wouldn't it be? Sudden key change back to C and does a vamp, right? Bass line's plugging away. And after 4 bars, it slows down here. It says D cell. Still doing the boogie woogie. And then goes to another pre-chorus. Instead of it going, you know, it seems the more, it takes that slow down and does this thing where like the mandolins and the accordions are like tremoloing, or you know, it seems the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live without it. Now this, but let's talk about it. Back to tempo. Wouldn't it be nice? That is some great stuff there. So remember I said being the same tempo all the time gets boring, boring, boring. Brian has broken every mold here. He's done some 2-bar phrases, 6-bar phrases, which are really just 4 plus 2. The transition was 2 bars. The second endings were 2 bars. So he broke the mold of all 4. He broke the mold of staying in the same key, and then he broke the tempo mold. So he's not staying in the same tempo. So he had to inform all his musicians. When we get to this little vamp part, you stay in tempo for 4 bars. For 4, I hate English. 4 bars. Then slow down a little. And that leads into pre-chorus 3. You know, it seems the more we talk about it. Same chords. You know, only makes it worse to live with. Now check this out. You go back up to the 3. So we hadn't done that before. If you look back in the other pre-choruses, it just goes A minor, G minor, A minor, E minor, 2-5, which is D minor 7 to G7. This time it goes E minor 7 to D minor 7, but immediately repeats that bar. So he makes something unique. Pre-chorus 3 does not, it adds extra bars. So that is, anytime you go back to a section you've already done before, but you make it different somehow. So this case, he actually just adds bars. You know, it seems the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live without it. But then he says, but let's talk about it. And that has to add extra bars. So check it out. You know, it seems the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live without it. Right here. But let's talk about it. Back to tempo. Wouldn't it be nice? Outro. Bum, ba, bum, bum, boom, bum, ba-doo-doo. Good night, my baby. Sweet time, my baby. You know, I gotta be honest, I've never liked that good night, my baby. I like the ba-ba-ba-ba. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. I think a baritone sax is actually doing that, I think, with the vocal. But then there's this good night, my baby. And now I think I kind of know why I don't like it. Because Mike Love, who is not really a composer, he has a great bass voice. He's the part of the Beach Boys that's Boom ba doom goo ba doo. He's an absolutely fantastic bass singer, but as a lead vocalist, he's the got her daddy's car and she cruised through the hamburger stand now. He serves his place in their band, and I especially highlight that he's a great bass singer. I don't think he's a great person. I don't like some of the things he's done historically, and some people defend him to no end. But Brian says it himself. He really did not like Mike Love, and Mike Love impeded some of the more creative music. That's my opinion. Sorry. I know there's apologists out there that will go to bat for all the amazing compositions that Mike Love has written. Yeah, show me one amazing composition Mike Love has written. So anyway, this good night, my baby, and kind of fading out. It just feels like somebody inserted something and they're like, hey, I want to get a part. And it turns out, you can look this up, I think Mike ended up suing for songwriting credit on the song for saying good night, my baby. Like, Brian is the composer of the song. The lyricist is Tony Asher. I'm sorry for saying "Good Night, My Baby." You deserve 0% of the royalties for that song. So just a petty thing. Mike had little to nothing to do with the composition of the song, but hey, you gotta, when you're not really a songwriter, you gotta insert yourself somehow and get your money. Or you could be still touring as the Beach Boys in 2025 with every single Wilson brother, having passed, but still touring the Kansas City County Fairgrounds. Sorry for my Mike Love rant. I don't really love that "Good Night, My Baby" part, and then it just fades out. That to me is the weakest part. But maybe that's I could chalk that up to a great song just doesn't want to end. I wish this song would go on for forever. I wish that every kiss was never ending. I wish this song was never ending. So it's a little kind of a cop out, fade out. Good night, my baby. Sleep tight, my baby. Sorry, I don't love that. That is the weakest part of the song. And whatever, I'll get over it. So that is the whole song. It really is a weird meditation on modulating from the key of A to the key of C. So the meditation here would be, what if you took the relative minor and made it major, and then you make the intro that, suddenly change to C, keep it in C for a while with some interesting non-diatonic movement, and then for the bridge, go back to that key of A and bring back the same instrumentation as the intro. It's an absolutely brilliant formula that you could literally write down on a piece of paper and use that in any number of ways. Brian exposes archetypes of songwriting. He exposes things that are universally true about songwriting, and that's what my channel is here to do, is to expose those to you, and hopefully you'll be able to use them. There's some weird stuff about this song. Brian may have written it about his sister-in-law. I'm not going to get into the creepiness or the presentism of that debate, but musicologist Philip Lambert called the themes a significant twist on the lyrics of Wilson's past songs, which fantasized about material possessions like cars and feats of physical skill, breaking the land speed record and one-night stands. I'm not sure which song he's referring to because they were pretty innocent one-night stands. In this song, he says, now the young lovers just want to be monogamous and draw strength and happiness from each other in the kind of world where we belong. Writing in his 2012 book, 50 Shades of the Beach Boys, biographer Mark Dillon describes Wouldn't It Be Nice as perhaps the band's most gloriously innocent song. Isn't that what I said earlier? I swear I didn't lift that. I really feel that. And one of Wilson's most adventurous arrangements. Nick Kent declared the harmonies to be so complex they seem to have more in common with a Catholic mass than any cocktail lounge a cappella doo-wop. I love Brian Wilson. Who else could invoke such words from writers? Writing for American Songwriter magazine, Jason Scott noted the song's whimsy and blissful feeling, highlighting the harp-like texture. I swear to God, I didn't even read this. I just pulled up some notes on the song. I always thought it sounded like a harp. Harp-like texture of the guitar intro. In Far Out magazine, Amy Ferrier named Wouldn't It Be Nice as a pop masterpiece and puppy love anthem, listing its nostalgic lyrical themes and layers of instruments as elements of the song worthy of note. In 2006, Pitchfork ranked it number 7 on its list of 200 best songs of the 1960s. That's pretty good, number 7. Contributor Joe Tangari wrote in his entry, "Wouldn't It Be Nice has everything you love about the Beach Boys in spades. It's the ultimate starry-eyed teenage symphony to God, and it perfectly captures the earnest devotion we only seem capable of in a small window of years. Your Icarus moment, you're hitting your peak, and in Pet Sounds and Smile, Brian was clearly peaking. You can hear him peaking right here in this song." In 2008, Pop Do's staff members ranked it the 22nd best single of the previous 50 years, writing that no other song so perfectly captures the idea of innocent love. National Review ranked it number 5 on a 2006 list of greatest politically conservative rock songs. That's kind of weird. I don't know if I agree with that. Where it was described as pro-abstinence and pro-marriage. Okay, is that why it's conservative? Okay, whatever. Back in the 50s, they weren't even allowed to get married young. They had to like hide things from their parents. So it's really just saying, wouldn't it be nice when we're allowed to like spend the night together? So I don't really know how conservative that is. Yes, it is pro-marriage. I don't know if that means conservative either. I think that's a ridiculous statement, but whatever. In 2021, it was ranked number 297 on Rolling Stone's list of 500 greatest songs. Rolling Stone lists kind of stink. Anyway, I feel validated from all of these, critic reviews that I've pulled up here, because they said a lot of the things that I wrote as my initial impressions earlier. But anyway, thanks for listening, and I want you to subscribe to my channel, and please come support my Patreon, High Castle Conservatory. Thanks a lot for watching this video and taking an interest in my channel. Please help me reach a larger audience by hitting subscribe below and ringing the notification bell. Check out my video playlist page to find the categories that most interest you. Leave me a super thanks here on YouTube, and even better, come join my Patreon. Please consider buying music for my original projects I.S.S. and High Castle Teleorchestra. Also, don't forget to sign up for my email list on the front page of timsmolens.com. You can find information about all of those things in the description below. Thanks again.